Hi readers, welcome back to Reading Realm. As I said in 2 videos ago, I am going to be doing a lot of recordings right now because this is my last night in this house. I am moving and I would like to pack these books that I have finished. So this is the 3rd recording I'm doing back to back at 2:47 in the morning, but here we are. Today I am going to be reviewing the shortest book that I have actually reviewed on this channel. It is a book called Love and Fiction by Koto Taika, who is actually my friend who published this. And a fun fact about this is that she published this the same way that I published my 2nd book. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about how this book was published first, just so you'll understand. This book is published by Bookleaf Publishing, and it is a book of poetry, and basically how both of us did it was they had a challenge to authors to write 1 poem every day for 20 days. And technically you didn't have to do 1 every day, but you just had to write 20 poems in 20 days. And once you did that, they would publish it. And so I did a book of poetry about my grandma after she died, and I will probably make a video about that book for this channel, as well as probably one for my first book, because I don't think that I have one that's well made on this channel, if I even still have the one I used to have at all, because I did that right when I first started this channel and I didn't really know what I was doing, and now I've been doing YouTube on both this channel and my other channel for quite a while. I have another channel that is more of a gaming and vlog channel where I post daily. I have videos of my dog and my pets and just lots of gaming and occasional vlogs. Like, I'm moving right now. I'm working on a moving vlog for this as well. So if you're interested in that, check out Mystic Imagination. I will have a link to that channel in the description. But this book, Love and Fiction. So this book, I personally, and I'm not just saying this because the author is my friend, I love this book because it is only 20 poems, but each one is so vivid in terms of the feeling behind it. And personally, I am a poet, but I am very picky about poetry. I generally don't like poetry as a genre. I will like certain poems or certain poets, but as a whole, poetry isn't my go-to thing to read. But this, I just love it because all of them are so specific, but yet vague in a way where you can tell that she had a specific inspiration for these either descriptions or feelings, but she's not exactly open about what, which I personally really like. I know that some people want their poetry to be very out there and telling everything, which I know is a style, and I know that some people like that, and sometimes I will write things that are a little bit more distinct or specific to something because I know the author. I do know some of the specific things that were inspired or were inspiration for these poems, but even knowing that, I feel like the poems are just so thought-provoking and kind of imagery-provoking. And they do, hers actually does have little pictures you can see. This person here, this is for a poem called Beautiful Mystery. Mine did not have pictures, that was an option for me, but I just didn't really want them for mine. I just wanted it to be about the words. But the way that hers has these little pieces of artwork, I feel like they give a hint into what she was thinking or what might have inspired her, but it isn't really obvious. I think a really good example is Sad Smile, which has this ship sailing towards the sunset. And I do actually know what that poem is inspired by, and out of her desire to keep these as kind of an enigma about what they are, I'm not going to say, but with that imagery and the words, it does really connect to what it's inspired by, but it still works really well as a standalone thing. And I think that one of the other things that I love about this is, like the title, Love and Fiction. This book is about not only love poems towards people, but it's also kind of celebrating love towards fictional worlds or imagination, called Beautiful Fantasy, that is basically about wanting to live in a fantasy and being in love with this dream and what she would do if she lived in a fantasy world. And I love this line from it where it says, "I'd find a dragon and a sword, then break its chains, and we'd fly away from the knight and the prince." Because I love just the imagery of that, of instead of having the knight come slay the dragon for her, she wants to take the dragon and just fly away. Who cares about the knight? Who cares about the prince? And it's just, the words, I can just resonate with them because I also share this love for fictional worlds. And so the line, like, "I'd find the unlikely hero and join them on their quest," it's just, I would love that. I would love to join some of my favorite characters on their quests, or even just talk to them, who knows? And I love, like I said, they do have photos or pictures. This one for that poem is a girl riding on a dragon, which is so fitting. And I just love it. And then the last poem is called Love and Fiction, like the title of the book. And it's basically about the love for these imaginary worlds. And then there are still poems that are more direct love poems. Storms of Love is more towards a person or a character, depending on how you might interpret it. It's just, I love the way that they balance this kind of feeling of being in love with something that isn't necessarily considered real, but can be real to the reader. And I think there is a line in one of the poems about that, actually. I just love it. I know I've been saying I love all these books, but I really do. And this one, I just, even though she is my friend, I'm not just saying that because of this. I genuinely think that her her imagery is amazing, especially considering that she is Japanese and English is not her first language, but she wrote this in English, and I actually helped her with editing and spelling and stuff like that for this book, just because I loved reading her work and I loved talking to her about it. And so I really, really hope that you check it out. I actually wrote the little review on the back as well, because they had a place where other authors could submit something. So I said it was 20 poems of fantasy, love, loneliness, comfort. Love and Fiction is a collection inspired by people, stories, and worlds that the author loves and has been inspired by. Vivid, powerful, and profound love and fiction is a beautiful collection. So, I highly recommend it. It's short, it's very thin, you can see. And another thing that I just wanted to bring attention to, because I love the symbolism of it, is, like I mentioned, she's Japanese, and in Japan at festivals sometimes they hold little sparklers, and she's talked about doing that, and she really enjoyed that when she was living there. And the cover is a person holding a little sparkler. So it's a nice book to have to just be able to grab and read, because it is very light, it's very small, and it's only 20 poems, so you can read it really quickly. But they all are so so good about the imagery they invoke or the feeling they invoke. There is a poem called Silent Solitude, which is more about loneliness, and you can really feel it in the words. Beautiful Mystery has a lot of the imagery, but also, like the title says, it's very mysterious. But then there's others that are like kind of more I don't know how to really describe them, but Bound is one that's a little bit darker, but still kind of optimistic, but in a really interesting way, and just kind of this whole idea of sort of these characters. It's kind of a reoccurring theme throughout it, and I think you can kind of tell that some of the people that she's writing to in these, or that she's writing about, are fictional characters that she knows of, rather than real people in her life. But I think that makes it really interesting, because these characters that she writes about are often characters who are just trying to achieve something or trying to pursue something, and kind of I don't know how to really explain it without reading the whole poem, and I don't really want to do that because I don't have licensing to read it as an audiobook. But things like Sinking is a poem that is about a particular character. And it's so vivid, this scene that she's depicting in her words, even without knowing who it's about in terms of the fictional character. And at first when I read it, I didn't know who it was about. Now I do, but I love it just as much either way. And I think it's also important to note that she isn't trying to fit a particular framework of poetry. I talk about this a lot when I talk about poetry. I like to write poetry as well. That's what I've published so far. And because of that, I have a certain way that I like to write it, and how I like to write it is not a certain way at all. So sometimes I'll write haiku, sometimes I'll write really free form, sometimes I'll write in a way where I want it to rhyme or I want it to have a certain rhythm, but I don't really care about some other aspects. Personally, I hate writing sonnets. I had a traumatic experience with a teacher making us write sonnets. I don't like them. But like haiku, I'm fine with, even though they are more structured. But I think sometimes with poetry, I can tell if the poet is trying to force it into a specific rhythm or a specific rhyme or a specific pattern. And sometimes that takes me out of it a little bit, and I don't really like it as much. I don't think she did that at all. I think she does have many times where she does rhyme, but it's because it makes sense in the line. It isn't trying to put a kind of awkward word into the sentence just so it will rhyme. It just kind of happens to. And that's what happens with me a lot of the time with my writing when I do poetry as well. And I think that makes a really big difference, because then it just feels more natural, and in my opinion, it feels more comfortable to read. So I highly, highly recommend Love and Fiction by Kota Taika, and I really hope you will check it out, both because this book is amazing and to support my friend. I genuinely really love this book, despite the fact that she is my friend, but also because she's my friend. Please go show her love and support. If you have read it, or if you think you would like to, let me know what your thoughts are on it, and I will have her look at them if I receive comments about it. She would love to get feedback, especially because she is not a native English speaker, so this was a big undertaking for her, and I'm really proud of her for being able to do it and being able to get across so much imagery in English, even though that is not her native language. And she did not write these in Japanese and have them translated. She wrote all of them in English. And she has been learning for a little while, but I still think it's very impressive to write such imagery-based writing in your second language. So please show her love and support. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Let me know if you are into poetry, what kind of poetry you like. Do you feel the same about not liking it when it's really forced, or being really particular about liking a certain style of poetry? Because I know a lot of people whose kind of automatic response is like, poetry. That thing I had to read in English class. But I think there is some good poetry out there. I personally have a hard time reading a lot of older poetry. But when I find good poetry, I really enjoy it. So thank you all so much. I hope you like this video. Please let me know your thoughts, and keep reading. Bye!